Yeah, I'm reading some of these. Yeah, all you don't voters, Plato had a good quote. People who refuse to engage in the political system end up being ruled by those who do. You don't vote, other people are going to vote, and guess what? Because you think, oh, that legitimizes it or whatever. No, it's already legitimate because they have force. It's legitimate, whether you say it is or isn't, because it's already in place. Other people are going to vote, they're going to pick who they want, and that person is going to make laws which will be enforced over you, whether you vote or not, whether you agree with it being legitimate or not. It's already there. It doesn't need your permission because it exists based on force. It never existed based on you acquiescing or giving it your blessing or something. All governments derive their power via force and manipulation. They don't care if you vote or not. You have the right to vote. If you don't vote, you still have to obey all the laws that are derived from the people who get in based on the people who did vote. That ain't going to change. So I don't see why not vote for damage control. Why not? It takes like 2 minutes of your day once a year, once every 4 years. And then you got all the rest of the time to do all the other types of activism that you feel like are more effective. But saying you're not going to vote because you think that's legitimizing the system, like that's one of the dumbest things I've heard. This system's already there. It's like, all right, why don't you stop using money? Because it legitimizes banks and central banks, and you disagree with that. So just give up money. Be realistic. They want you to be defeatist and not vote. Because guess what? They and their cohorts are going to vote. And you know what constitutes who gets into power? Whoever gets more votes. It doesn't matter what choices are legitimate or not. What matters is whether or not those choices and this process is going to lead to the next person who goes in a leadership position who, based on force, will have the ability to pass laws. And they will. What do you gain from not voting? Just some sort of self-righteous pat on the back? It does nothing. You're basically forfeiting. It's like having a game, like let's say you have a soccer match and you decide, you know what, we're not going to play. And the other team's still there and they just go and kick the ball in the goal over and over and they destroy you and they still get the win and that's it. No one cares whether you tried or not or played or not or whatever. There was already a game and these are the rules. Before you were born, they're already in place. And just copping out and saying I'm not going to participate is not going to change it. It's not a rebellion against it. It's just you being a pudwack going, I give up. I'm just going to do nothing. Great plan. Go do nothing. You have a way, a very shitty way, but you have a small way of changing who's in power and putting someone else in there, and it's called voting, and you're just going to not do it. Good idea. Because you don't like any of the choices. No, they'll just continue to get worse. The fewer people who vote, the less money they have to spend on manipulating you. The more of you they can get to just quit, the better. They don't care if 1% of the population votes, and that's the only people who participate. That's still who decides who gets in. That's how it is now. There are primaries in certain counties where the person who wins by 400 votes. Almost 90% of the people are not participating. Guess what? Doesn't matter. person with most votes is the winner. And they go on, and then one of them gets selected to the next one. So, the fewer you vote, easy. Them and their friends vote for themselves and they win. Not voting is just dumb. It's like people who are in love with what ought to be while ignoring what actually is. And that's not gonna work. Yes, we should have paper trail and voting machines. And there are rigged voting machines. And that sucks. But always force a dictatorship to act like one. Like, they don't even have to lie if you don't vote at all. They don't even have to rig the machine if you don't even show up. At least you have a chance of catching them cheating if you force them to cheat. But if you don't even force them to cheat, they don't even have to do that much.
And the whole, it's your right. You have a right to vote, so exercise it. First and foremost, voting isn't a right. It's a privilege. A right is something you have inherently. Second of all, yeah, that doesn't work because that doesn't motivate people to engage. It's just like, oh, well, this is something I can do, but I mean, I'm too lazy to do it. Now, me personally, I don't vote for philosophical reasons because I'm against the concept in general.
I see voting as damage control.
Do what?
Voting is damage control.
Yeah, it's like a opinion poll to make sure they're not going too far in one direction or another.
Yeah, and that's partially the reason I don't do it. Another reason is like, as Heinlein said in Starship Troopers, voting is political force. It's technically violence because you are acting in a way that enforces your views onto others. And I'm a pretty strict adherent of the NAP, so I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do this because I don't believe in aggressing upon others, so I'm just going to sit this out.
Yeah, but if you don't vote, other people are, and then their force is going to be implemented on you.
By default, you're just kind of shit out of luck if you don't do it.
That's like lack of self-defense, yeah.
I know, it's one of those, it's a double-edged sword because I'm with Angry on this where it's like, yeah, I'm not trying to take other people's rights away. And I'll tell you, in Atlanta, when I was living there, it was like, if it was an incumbent who was, running against a Republican, for example, I vote against the incumbent. I just wanted it to change, like get someone else new in there so that there's no stability in that area. Like if it was a Democrat, Republican, whatever, whoever the challenger was, vote for that person, especially in the local elections, because I don't want them to get any foothold at all.
And sometimes it's not enforcing your will on others. Like the referendum to legalize marijuana, for example, you can still not smoke it if you don't want to, but other people now can if they want to. So you're not enforcing your will on them. You're just preventing others from enforcing their will. So like that's a negative right. You know what I mean? Like if you're voting to allow freedom, that's okay because you still don't have to do it. But why do you got to make everyone else do what you do?
Yeah, if there was ever a politician or a policy that was exclusively focused on the enforcement of negative rights, then that's a whole different story. But if it's like I'll promise you this, I'll promise you that, go fuck yourself.
Hey,
well, we have referendums.
Angry, I'm going to hang up on you. We're just going to take other calls.
Majority, but that's a direct vote on a direct policy. But as far as voting for people, once in a blue moon, you get a Ron Paul. Most of the time, you get psychopathic liars.
Cool, here we go. All right, now I'm back. All right, so my man Ryan Dawson right here, he's the author of some of these fine works here. So we have Welcome to the USSA, The Corruption in Government Media, and his newest one, The Separation of Business and State. Mm-hmm. So I think this is the things you're kind of writing here kind of more or less correlate to what we're talking about when it comes to like apathy and ignorance in the United States, the causes, effects, and possible solutions too. So what do you think is the biggest problem right now with democracy in this country?
The inertia of the herd. I think a lot of people have given up on the system. They think they're completely unaware of it and ignorant of politics, and that's part of a cultural problem with the taboo socially on even talking about subjects like politics or religion. You don't do it. Or you have people who are engaged and they know about it, but they feel disenfranchised that no matter what, whoever I vote for,
it's just going to be some puppet for large corporations. They're not going to listen to me. All they ever do is lie to me. So why should I vote at all?
Yeah.
That's what I think they're thinking. And I think that's a bad philosophy, because if you're going to say, well, I'm forced into choosing the lesser of two evils, I always throw that argument back at them, because forfeiting is even less, has less of a chance of affecting change than engaging. If you want to do a protest vote, go in and vote third party or write Mickey Mouse or whatever. But if you don't vote at all, then no one knows that you're trying to protest the system. It just seems like you're apathetic, lazy, you're not involved, or didn't even know there was an election going on.
Right.
And so, and there is a bit of that too. I think on an off year, a lot of people vote for the president because there's a lot of coverage. Mm-hmm. And so when there's a presidential election, the voter turnout is higher for everything under it because they're already there and it's on the card.
Yeah.
But on an off year, or like if you're voting for the governor or the mayor or something like that, nobody shows up.
Yeah. I mean, that's what the whole, what we were talking about earlier is about, like how like in LA last year had like only like 16% of the city voted or something like that, and like nobody knew who their mayor was. But when it comes to the president, or like the presidential elections or national elections, it's almost like there's this whole celebrity type of thing. You feel like like us in America, we have like this like celebrity kind of like pop culture that we kind of go towards. So in other words, it's like if our politicians or our policies just aren't, excuse me the expression, Kardashian-esque, or something that we can see on TMZ, they just don't interest us? Or is it really that just people are just tired? Like, I don't want to pick between the lesser.
Well, that's the irony of it, is the president has less power over your life than your mayor.
Right.
The president is basically just there to either approve or veto the laws that Congress make. It's like the least important position compared to your local government. And you have a lot more power. Your vote carries a lot more weight in your local elections or your state elections than the national elections. And they'll participate in the national elections and then not in the state and local elections, which is mind-blowing. But part of it is because of the media coverage. A lot of people don't even know that there's a race going on. Those you can find online, but it costs a lot of money to get on TV. And so we've already sort of filtered the candidates to those who are already part of this political structure and have these coffers and join these parties. But if you're doing that, a Republican or a Democrat, I call them Republicrats, you're already feeding into these corporate-sponsored and approved candidates.
Yeah.
And it's very hard. It's like Ralph Nader's father told him. Ralph was complaining, young Ralph Nader, saying, Dad, we really need a third party in the United States. And his dad kind of looked up from his paper and said, I'd settle for a second.
I'd settle for a second, huh? What do you think it is about the party process in this country?
Well, I think, one, they inundate people with just all this kind of academic minutia on just politics and economics, and it's hard to understand, but people know what they want. You don't have to know how to get it. That's up to the politician, and they're supposed to explain it. But they say, well, do you want higher taxes or not? Would you like to be able to smoke marijuana or not? Would you like to do this or not? You know what you want. And it's mind-blowing because you'll get numbers in the 80-90% opposed to the TSA or opposed to the NSA spying, and they still do it anyway, right? Because they're not held to accountability. Incumbents have a return rate of over 95%, and yet everyone disagrees with their issues, and yet they keep getting reelected because only a small minority of people who do agree with them are the ones voting.
Right.
And the ones that say, I hate those people, I don't want to vote for them. Like, well, if you don't vote at all, you're forfeiting the game.
Yeah.
I mean, in an imaginary world, we could have a completely different system, but let's be pragmatists here. We do live in this system. This is what we have, and you do have the power to get them out. Oh, they just fake all the votes. That's not true.
Yeah.
And we saw in Colorado and Washington where they had a referendum, they legalized marijuana, they got involved in the political process. If people got as excited about ending wars and corporate welfare as they do about smoking pot, maybe we could do something about that. Where when you take a class on government, all they talk about are the actual structures of, here are the three divisions of government, the judiciary, the legislative. They don't really get into issues. And part of the problem is because it's so taboo to talk about any of these topics, any of these wedge issues. And we've got to break down that taboo. Yeah. Because you can't improve. Yes, it sucks to argue about stuff, but it sucks a lot more to not argue about stuff and have nothing change.
Well, I mean, just like you said, even on the issues of education and the media and everything else like that, when we talk about apathy and ignorance, at least from from our end, a lot of times we often hear that it is the responsibility of the citizen to kind of get themselves informed and get themselves involved and get themselves fired up. These citizens will get fired up real big about like you said about smoking pot, but they won't get fired up about extending medical benefits to older people or whatever. Just as an example.
Yeah, sure.
But at the same time, is it just the fault of the citizen? I mean, obviously, it's our responsibility to know.
Oh yeah, of course not. That'd be another false paradigm. Part of it's the fault of the citizen not engaging. Part of it's the fault of the mass media for not covering it. Part of it's the fault of the educational system. There's a lot of blame to go around.
Yeah.
It's not a one-sided, well, it's all you. And we do seem to have a problem with that too. We like to have it's all yous. It's all the corporations. Yeah. Oh, it's all the government.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all the stupidity of people. No, it's all of that.
So what do we do?
Well, I think that one reason a lot of people have abandoned the process is because people a little older than us sort of grew up without the internet. And so when you're talking about television, you've got to already have a rather large financial backing to even bother with it. Because you have the best ideas in the world, but no one will know who you are. No one will know you're running in the race. Because if you can't get the ads, if you can't get on TV, forget about it. I mean, you saw what happened when Kennedy beat Nixon. They put his handsome face on TV and he shot up and won.
Yeah.
But if people watch the presidential debates, that's something we'd have to reform because they don't debate anymore.
Yeah,
they don't take turns answering questions and don't respond to each other. Right. That's something we could reform too. But the way to get at it from the start, there's all these things we want to change. But the first thing we have to change is media. And it's like what you're doing now. This is alternative media. Not to get trumped in with the conspirators and things like that. This is alternative media.
Right.
And alternative media has broken it down. You look at the Ron Paul movement. Here's a guy, he's been saying those things his whole life. He voted against the first Gulf War. Nobody knew who he was. But because of YouTube and video share sites and MySpace, Facebook, etc., Twitter now, he had a mass movement, raised $7 million in one day, all from little donations. You don't have to be beholden to corporate interests. And the reason people were doing that, it was because they agreed with his message. He was against these wars, he's against corporate welfare, he wanted it in the Fed, he wanted it in foreign aid, and all these things. Like, yeah, let's stop these. Everyone's in agreement. These are no Sherlock kind of issues. It's not that difficult to understand. Yeah, I don't want to kill people I've never met. I don't want wars. Everybody agreed on that. And it was because of the web. So you have one generation getting this information from the web, which is sort of corporate free, or less so than TV, who knew there weren't any weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They knew this about Syria. They knew about all this. But the people sitting on the couch watching Fox, ABC, and NBC, CBS, I just call them one alphabet soup network. They have the same catchphrases from the same teleprompters. The people watching state propaganda were completely in the dark. And so it's not, you ask me, what are we going to do? There's not a quick fix. We have to continue to build up press online.
Right.
And that's going to break it down. And we have to really push local and state political processes and elections, because trying to start at the top and change the presidency is unrealistic.
I'm telling you, the days of feeling like you don't need to vote because you're in a traditionally pro-gun state are over. Anti-gun Democrats are fleeing traditionally anti-gun states like California and moving to places like Virginia and Texas in droves. And for whatever ridiculous reason, they're voting for the same type of politicians that were responsible for them leaving their previous state in the first place. I will never understand this. You leave one state because of the terrible policies only to go to another state and vote the same way, expecting a different result. But that's exactly what a lot of these people do. On top of that, you have people migrating from countries with oppressive or corrupt governments where they had less freedom, but then come to America where we have more freedom, but then vote for politicians here in America who are trying to mimic the same oppressive policies they ran from in their previous country. I just don't get it. Either way, the complacency in the gun community has got to stop. We're not even playing defense anymore. We're just losing. We look up every election season like, oh crap, where did our rights go? They're going the way of the dodo bird because we think it's enough to just call the other side stupid and sit back in our pro-2A state house of cards. Enough is enough. We have to stop doing this to ourselves. Enough with the infighting and this who's the purest 2A patriot BS. We are all on the same side. Want to give money to the NRA? Give money to the NRA. Want to give money to GOA, FPC, NAGA? I don't care. They're all fighting the same fight because I promise, while we're infighting, Bloomberg and gang are hitting us from all sides in the mainstream media, social media, politically, culturally, on the state level, the federal level, financially, you name it. They are kicking our ass. I said it in a live the other day that, you know what? Maybe we are winning the cultural war for the Second Amendment. But I take that back. We are not because we're distracted. Yes, as 2A supporters, our job is harder. All they have to do is throw money around and misinform the masses, where we have to educate people, fight political battles, find ways around social media and mainstream media blackballing, hold so-called pro-gun politicians accountable, and give your hard-earned money to gun rights organizations that are having to deal with the same BS as we are. But no one said protecting freedom would be easy. It's hard. It sucks. It's a thankless job. And by and large, people are going to think you're weird. But it has to be done. It just is what it is. We're better than this. We don't have the privilege of resting. There's no coasting or vacations. Whether you're politicking, making videos, holding rallies, training people, educating people, to me, it's all advocacy. And in this fight for our freedom, we need all hands on deck. Because make no mistake, I don't care what state you live in. It can happen in your state. Hell, Texas almost voted for Beto, and he bragged about wanting to take people's guns. Right now,